If people could take their seats, please, we'll get started. Good. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name's Sharon Perkins, and my role at the Town of Gawler is Executive Manager of Corporate Finance and Corporate Governance. I'd also like to welcome council members who are with us this evening, Mayor Shanks, Deputy Mayor Solomon, Councillor Davies, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Hennessy and Councillor Samble. And I would also like to acknowledge the apology from Councillor Lorna, who's unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight due to some work commitments. Also welcome Chris, who's our CEO, and there's the staff that are actually assisting with tonight's session. Just some housekeeping, which is please turn your phones to silent. For those that aren't frequent visitors to the Civic Centre, toilets are, if you need the toilets, they're just outside the door across the hallway. If we need to evacuate, just follow staff. The session tonight is actually being live streamed and will be available on the Town of Gawler YouTube page. If you would like to ask some questions when we get to question time, can you just please wait until you have a microphone? So this will allow everyone in the room to actually hear your question, but more importantly, the people that are actually watching online, they can also hear that. And we have a number of staff here tonight, so if you need assistance, feel free to reach out to them. So before we start, I'd just like to do the acknowledge of country. So I'd like to acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge that the Kaurna people are as custodians of the Greater Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the living Kaurna people today. So why are we here? So tonight's session is part of Council's consultation on the draft annual business plan and budget. The format is designed to actually give you some information, but also gather some community input as well, and allow for an open discussion on the budget and the annual business plan before the council makes its final decision on the budget in June. So the session will run, so Chris will actually give a presentation on the draft annual business plan, pointing out the key aspects. After the presentation, we will actually have a verbal submission from one of the participants, Kim Wright, who registered. We're just sort of breaking it up a bit because Kim has mentioned that she's got an alternative appointment. And then after that, we're actually going to have a table activity to try and capture some of your feedback on the community priorities, service levels, what you're prepared to trade off, and any other ideas that you might have. And then we'll have a Q&A session where you can actually ask questions of either Chris as the CEO or any of the council members that are actually here tonight. And then at the end of the session, if anyone else has registered to make a verbal submission tonight, we will receive those verbal submissions. Just from a next steps perspective, what we are actually doing is staff are collating the information that we collect tonight, either through the verbal submissions or any questions that are responded to. So we will collate that and we will present that to council as part for the council's consideration on a special council meeting that's going to be held on the 9th of June. So now I'll just hand over to Chris so he can start the presentation.
Thank you, Sharon. Good evening, everybody. I don't normally like standing behind the lectern, but we'll see how we go. First question, what is the annual business plan and budget? It's actually a combination of things that we're trying to share with our community. One, it should talk about the services that we want to deliver, talk about probably infrastructure investments that we're looking to make, how we're going to fund those things, and particularly of interest to most of our community members is what's the rates conversation and how we've come to where we landed in terms of the draft budget. It's important to acknowledge that this document doesn't sit in isolation. It has a lot of background to it. So up right at the very start, there's a thing called the Gawler Community Plan, and essentially that's where the council has come together with their collective thoughts about the future of the town of Gawler and put together, I guess, the high-level things that they want to deliver for the community. And then that's supported by some further documents. Now, number 2 there, asset management plans, are very important because we have a lot of infrastructure to manage, so roads, playgrounds, buildings, just to name a few. And if we don't manage those appropriately, we could quickly end up with infrastructure that starts to fail or doesn't meet the needs of our community. So we need plans to make sure we do that right. And then we have what's called the long-term financial plan. So that's a document that rather than look at 1 year in isolation, it looks at least 10 years into the future. And what that enables us to do is plot our trajectory. Now, I'm the first one to say that once you get past year 5 and through to year 10, it's not as accurate as you might get in the first or second years because there's many unknowns. But it's important to plot your trajectory. And the reason I say that, if we think about the town of Gawler, say 2 or 3 years ago, we had some deficit budget positions, and it was important to plan our way out of that. And if we think about last year, we had, or the year in currently, we budgeted for a surplus, and we're still looking to deliver that. So that was an important first step on that trajectory to financial sustainability. So, coming back to what we're primarily talking about tonight, and that's the draft budget. Pop quiz, who's had a bit of a look at the document before they came here tonight? Here's a look. Excellent. Right. There's a little bit of prior knowledge in the room. I know all my councillors have read it in detail all across it because they were part of adopting it. So, just in short, we're looking at $44 million worth of income. Now, that's not all rates, but a component is rates. About $33 odd million comes from rates. The rest is from grant funds or fees and charges. Capital investment, so they're things we're going to build, around $14.1 million, broken down to a number of areas. Operational spending of $43 million. The key number here that I'm really interested in is that surplus of $180,000. Again, looking back to a 10-year financial plan, talked about this, a trajectory, and our goal is to maintain surpluses going forward, because that allows us to do a couple of things. One, make sure we look after all our assets and look after them well. Gives us ability to pay down our debt and to continue to provide for the community going forward without going further into debt. Now, it's a thin surplus. I would say it's probably not as large as in a perfect world as we'd like, but it's all about balance. Oh God, forgot about this slide, there we go. It's all about balance. And the balancing act that we have is our community are requiring certain things of us, services, maintaining assets, sometimes increasing levels of service. Then on the other hand, it's the affordability of what council provides to its community. And I'm sure everyone in this room has not been immune to the cost of living pressures that we're all experiencing at the moment. I was going to share a little analogy. I'll come to it a bit later. So it's not as simple as saying we want to do all these things and we're just going to set the rates at an unaffordable level. We have to have that conversation about balance. So just to put some context on that $40 odd million that I said council spends annually in operating, I wanted to just share the kind of magnitude of expenditure we have in these particular areas in front of you. So I've got this number, there's about $122 discrete services we provide into the community, but you can lump them together in these kind of 8 buckets. So 15.5 million on managing our infrastructure. That's, as I said before, that's your roads, buildings, footpaths, curb and gutters. 7 million, trees, parks, sport and recreation. I will explain a bit further some of the components of these on the next slide. Waste management, so I'd argue what's one of the most sensitive items in our budget. If your bin doesn't get picked up, everyone's acutely aware I didn't get the service that I paid for. So we spend about $3.5 million a year on rubbish collection. Community events, heritage and culture, just under $1 million. Regulatory services, 3.7. I won't read them all out, but you can see them. The new one there that's is kind of new and for us is this economic development and tourism. So it's about $500,000 we spend there. And that's because the council made a decision that we need to invest more on business attraction and economic development to support our business community. Last year in particularly with the formation of the Section 41 Committee, which is the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee. So the next few slides will just give you a bit more insight into some of the things that are included that you may not think of day to day when you think about what does the council do. Now, I'm not going to say them all. You can obviously read what's up there, but some interesting numbers: 3,475 streetlights, 11,000 street trees, maintaining our sporting precincts, rapid response crew, and then importantly, managing the Williston Cemetery. Some costs that don't immediately come to the community's mind, I'm sure, because to be honest, I don't remember on a day-to-day basis probably all the services that we provide top of mind. The next few, waste, 1,500 waste collection services each year. Talk about rubbish collection, picking your bins up. We've got 13,000 assessments. So you'd say that every week there's 26,000 bins picked up, 2 bins per household, just as a rough number. And then you look at our public litter bins across the town. Illegal dumping, that's proving to become more of an issue for local governments. We struggle with it and are always looking for ways to try and deal with that in a cost-effective way. Community events, there's a few that will stand out there. The third point there, operating our Cultural Heritage Centre. And there are certain things that council must do and things council can choose to do. And you'd argue perhaps that the Cultural Heritage Centre is one of those, but it's one of those things that has proven to be very important to our community. So again, it's the balancing act that council has to juggle around what's important to our community and then balance around ability to pay. Next couple of areas there, regulatory services, town planning. Now, I'm sure some people get frustrated by our planning system, but obviously it's very important to try and get orderly development and growth within our communities, and we need a team that helps manage that. Parking management. Now, if you've got a parking fine, you will be annoyed, but then the other side of that is that parking is managed, traffic flows for the balance of the community to be able to access the areas they want to access. The other side, community is certainly, the community services space is certainly an important area, and I want to reflect on our libraries there for a moment. It's one of those areas, who's heard the term cost shift before? Here's some nods. So I'll use the library as a classic example where in the past the state government fund us a certain amount of money via a grant to buy library books. Every year without fail, it either doesn't get CPI'd or indexed for inflation, or it gets reduced. And what happens invariably is the council says, well, it's a very valuable service to our community. We need to cover that cost. But what that does inadvertently is it shifts the burden to the ratepayers rather than the state government, who should have borne that cost. So it's something that the council, we are acutely aware of, happens in a lot of areas, and we try to push back on that. That's where our local government association help us out, but it is something we need to be aware of. Another two areas, economic development, tourism. I mentioned about our Section 41 committee. Governance, communications and admin. Now, we are a large business and there's certain back of house services that we need to run the business. For example, our finance team, which help put the budget together, manage our finances, is just one example. Customer service is very important, something that's always top of my mind to get right or make sure we do better. And then there's the compliance side of the business, records management, etc. Right, here's probably the thing that's top of everyone's mind when they think about budgets and council. It's the rates. So again, thinking about this affordability context, what's in the draft budget at the minute is a proposed rate rise of 4.3%. And the question invariably comes, how did you arrive at that number? In our long-term financial plans, we talk about this concept of CPI plus 1%. And I've got there the 3.3, which was, at the time we put the budget together, was the CPI that we're aware of in March. Is that correct? December CPI, which was 3.3, to maintain all the current services we're providing. But what we know is that in our budget, there will be some new initiatives that we're looking to fund for the community and also looking to maintain some of those assets that we might have constructed in the prior year. And that's what that 1%'s for. Now, where we've had new properties come into the town of Gawler, they will get a rates notice for the first time, and they're called growth. And that will get that new growth income to fund those new properties. So if we keep them separate, but in terms of the current ratepayers, it's 4.3. Now, put context on that, CPI, I guess the question is, who's gone and filled up their car with petrol lately? Be acutely aware of the increased cost of fuel due to the global issues at the minute. That's driven up, in my humble opinion, it's been one of the key factors that's driven up the new inflation figure for the latest publicised rate, which is 4.9%. Now, we need to have regard for that, but council's not automatically going to raise its proposed rate to match that. What we are going to do is have regard for what pressure that may bring on us, and understand whether we can manage it without increasing from where we are, or whether we do need to have a look at a slight increase. I don't want to preempt the outcome, but pretty sure I can say that it's not an automatic thing to jump to that new CPI number. If you go online, there's a lot of conjecture at times about how the rates are distributed and how much money council gets from rates and how does growth come into it. You know, my property value has gone up 20%, so council must get 20% more rates. Not the case. I'm going to give this a shot, try and explain how it works. So, what we do as a council is determine essentially the pool of money we need to deliver the services to the community. And then the Local Government Act says you use the value of the properties in question to distribute the relative burden of the rates. So, as one example, if every property in the town of Gawler went up 10%, it doesn't mean the town of Gawler gets 10% more rates. All it means is the means of distribution hasn't changed. But if we had a property that went up 10% and a property that went up 20%, just assume there's only two properties in the world, the property that went up higher amount would carry a higher burden of the rate revenue, but it's as a means of distribution, not because of the relative value of their property. Does that make sense? Yeah? It is sometimes difficult to get your head around that one. Right, cost pressures. I've been alluding to them, I think, through my conversation so far. I've got the next slide where I'll talk in more detail about probably the two things I'm going to be talking to the council about when we come back after the public consultation period. The first is our interest costs. So we do have a level of borrowings as a council, which is entirely normal, but the RBA has put up interest rates since we adopted the budget, 0.25%, 25 basis points. Now, the second column is where we're sitting right now. So that's each 25 basis points, or 0.25%, worth about $56,000. So if nothing changes, we're immediately $56,000 behind the eight ball because something happened after we adopted the draft. The RBA are indicating that all things, they're not committing to it, but they're saying there is a possibility of some further rises. If you say there's two, that puts us about $160,000 behind the eight ball. Now again, I'd be advocating with the council, they don't necessarily need to jump to all of that, but we need to have regard for that possibility. Fuel's the other one. So we do benefit by being only 42 kilometres in area, square kilometres in area, so that helps in that our team delivers services without having to travel long distances. But even with our relatively modest fuel bill in local government speak, based on the prices of a couple of weeks ago, it's still looking at adding about $40,000 to our fuel bill. But again, we think there's ways we may be able to manage that. But the factors we need to think about. The other thing I just want to add, which I was remiss of me not to mention, oh no, I'm coming to it, sorry. And this is just a slide to make it very clear that the draft budget's not the final decision of council. There's lots of things they need to take into consideration. Some I've just mentioned. Community feedback is at the core of it. Our final property valuations in terms of distribution. Other intelligence we've managed to glean along the way. So there's lots of pieces of the puzzle that are going to come together before council makes its final determination. And as I said, council won't necessarily jump to saying, well, we need to increase rates to fund the whole shooting match. There's other things they can look at. Savings and efficiencies. The council could say to me, Mr. CEO, that's all well and good. We're not going to raise the rates anymore. You need to find some savings. Entirely possible. Deferring some expenditure. There might be some projects that we say aren't as urgent as others. Adjusting the timing. There may be projects that are important that we want to commit to, but for example, we may be able to straddle a couple of financial years. So, for example, halve the cost in one year and put it in the other. Or a possible change in proposed rate rise. So there's no one answer, I don't think, here, and possibly it could be a combination of all four. But it's certainly not a simple conversation. Now, speaking of things that happened after we adopted the draft budget, the federal budget came down and we had a little windfall. The first dot point there talks about local roads, supplementary local roads funding. It was an unknown that the federal government hadn't committed to prior to the budget being delivered, and we've had a windfall there that we hadn't factored into our draft budget. So I said at the start of the presentation, there's an underlying surplus of about 180,000, I think I said. Thank you. I'm good at maths. This means now that on face value our surplus has jumped because we've already put the expenditure that we wanted to do in terms of road maintenance. That revenue bumps up our surplus to about $350,000, which is an excellent outcome. It's a good place to be in. Now, some things that weren't necessarily quantified, particularly in the federal budget, but were alluded to, is some possible new funding opportunities. There are some significant buckets of money that the government has alluded to that we may be able to apply for to take some pressure off some of our capital commitments for infrastructure. But again, it looks like we'll have to apply for that. Now, the way we generally handle that is we might leave the project in the budget, funded as it is now, but if we can get a grant, that'll be a windfall, and it would ultimately mean less borrowings need to be taken by the council. Now, this is a similar slide to what I showed earlier, but this one is particularly on the rates component, how much rates goes into each of these services. And I've shown it there as a dollar figure as per $100. So you could translate that easily into a percentage if you like. And it just helps understand perhaps the distribution of where the rates income is spent in particular. So I'm just going to talk about some of the priorities that are in the budget and what pillar they sit under in terms of delivering the priorities that Council said were important to them. So under our identity, we've got the implementation of the Gawler Town Centre framework. So last night, Council adopted a draft for community consultation, but that's a piece of work looking at how the CBD functions and how we set it up for future success. Advocacy to support Gawler's interest in regional growth and development. That's a piece of work that the council and the mayor and I are doing on a very regular basis with particularly the state government to look at how we can support Gawler better. Asset renewal. It's the one piece, if we don't spend right, we pay the price, or future generations pay the price. Growth. Now, the first top point I'm very impressed with or proud of that the team have put this forward. Spray Seal Rural Roads Transition Program. That's a big heading. What it means is over the next 10 years, we've got a program where we'll make sure there's no dirt roads left in the town of Gawler. 5 years. Over the next 5 years, we've got a program to seal every unsealed road in the town of Gawler. And there's a reason why it's over 5 years, because it coincides with when we'd need to replace a grader. And what it will mean is if we can seal those roads, we no longer have to maintain a dirt road, which are quite expensive to maintain. But also at the end of 5 years, we won't need to go out and purchase a new grader for goodness knows what they cost. How much? $850K. So it's an investment in future savings for our community. I've already mentioned the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee. The Enhancing Town Presentation Program. I'm actually recommending to Council we put 2 additional staff on this year to work on our outdoor crew to complement, we'll grab an existing staff member to make a team of 3. And their priority will essentially be on town presentation and amenity. Now, this isn't about committing to a certain amount of cuts on your verge per year, like some of the councils do, but this is about sending a message and delivering that the presentation of our town is of high priority, and it's about creating a wonderful amenity for our community. Our community, new play space, Jack Keeper Reserve play space. That's a $480,000 project. Aspire Walking Connection, quite excited about this one. It's to create a connection from the Aspire estate back here, heading into Gawler, and essentially be able to get across the other side of Maynooth Road. Now, Gawler Aquatic Centre renewal upgrade. There's about $1.3 million in that one. Now, the pools is an important asset for our community. There's a problem at the minute. The joints in the shell of the main pool are leaking water, quite a considerable amount of water, and the tiling needs to be redone. So that's the majority of the funding. But there's also some other works that will be done at the same time. So some general TLC in terms of asset renewal, but particularly in terms of accessibility and inclusion. There's a set of removable stairs we're going to purchase so that people can get easier ingress and egress from the pool. Environment. I won't list them all now, but you can see them there. I think one of the things we are looking to transition more, or at a faster rate, to electric vehicles. We're not looking to, I wouldn't say overinvest, it'll just be over time, but there's two things there. It should help with running costs, but also help with our environmental emissions and our responsibilities there. Leadership, and again, I talked about this internal management we need. There's the payroll system. But the one I do want to talk about for a minute is these microphones. We have had some challenges with our microphones in terms of the speaker system, particularly in broadcasting to the community as part of our council meetings. So we have some funds in there to get that right. Now, I hope I haven't gone too far over time, Sharon. There's just a few projects that I want to particularly focus on, just for your benefit, to share some of the big projects that are in the budget. Some I will have already mentioned, but I'll just run through this list. This one I don't like, and I don't mind the fact we're having an election, I just don't like paying for it. EXA have, they charge us for the privilege, $250,000. So those are the local government elections that are going to occur in November, this coming November, I'm sorry. The Aquatic Centre I've mentioned, the two staff and some plant and equipment is that $411,000. I was talking about enhancing our town presentation. Finnis Street renewal. So Finnis Street's contained within the Churchill precinct, a state heritage listed area, and that's to do renewal, curb and gutter, and the pavement of Finnis Street. I've mentioned the Aspire connection. Now, this is a particular project I'm very passionate about. $750,000 I've recommended to council that we spend over and above our normal footpath program, and that's because there's a lot of footpaths we have that need connecting to other footpaths. We've got a lot of broken connections if you look across the town of Gawler. And I'm recommending to council that they invest heavily in footpaths for accessibility and inclusion, to ensure that people who can traverse, whether they're walking, cycling, kids, prams, etc., people with disabilities, wheelchairs, etc. I want to make sure that the town of Gawler is accessible. Geelong Lane, so this is one of the roads that's currently a dirt lane that we're going to be upgrading to a seal. Dalkeith Road, so this is a contentious road that no doubt many of you have heard in conversations. We're partnering with Playford City Council to reseal and do some severe maintenance to bring that up to spec. So $1.5 million each for a $3 million spend. So I think that will be well received. And I mentioned the Jack Cooper Reserve play space. So that is broadly the end of my dissertation on what's in the budget and how it all comes together. I might hand back, is this where I hand back to you, Sharon? Okay, awesome. I'm going to hand back to Sharon. Thank you, everybody.
This is where we're going to deviate a bit from the original plan because we actually do have we provide the opportunity to have some of the verbal submissions and we do have Kim Wright from the DADS group, and we'll just bring a microphone over to you, Kim, and I'll just ask Ursula to put your presentation up on the screen as well. So,
thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity. This slide presentation will probably just continue to move through as we speak. So what I would like to do tonight is to provide an executive update and program report on funding that we've received from Council in the last 12 months up to this financial year, and I'm very grateful for that. And I have provided the update and program report to all councillors so that they are aware of our outcomes and what we've done. You'll see we've been pretty busy this year as you look at the overhead up there. We have grown exponentially this year, which is wonderful to see new families coming with their children. We've now also expanded the digital program, excuse me, where we've recently just done some mental health support program training for fathers, and that was conducted right around Australia, and we had 3 of our dads, excuse me, sit in on that over the 6-week period, and including myself, and it was very beneficial, and so we're really excited about that. We were semi-finalists in the South Australian Community Achievement Awards. I heard from Bron Anderson, who was actually on the panel, that we were this close to becoming a finalist, but she said she couldn't do any more for us than she already did. So you'll notice that in the report that we put theory into practice through integration, father-infant bonding and play. We've done lots of wonderful things this year. Your funding that the council has provides for the Dad's Digital Connect program, which provides our Facebook page, our website splash page, which in there is some other training opportunities for dads to take up. And then the Digital Dads program is twice a week, Mondays and Thursday nights. We have guest speakers come through and professionals and health professionals, and also like I say, our first aid that we've just done, mental health first aid support program. I just wanted to maybe just give you a couple of impact stories that is in the report. And during 2025, one of our family's young child experienced a life-threatening illness. The impact on the family created socially isolating incidences, considerable stressful situations for the parents, and unemployment for the father, who needed to visit their daughter in ICU every day for 2 weeks. This particular dad was a leader of our local Dads of Gawler group. As a result of this family being unable to access funding and other physical supports, the Dads of Gawler group families came together to provide not only monetary support and emergency relief packages of food and fuel to the family. A special outcome was the recovery of the little girl, of course, and Dad being supported to find another employment opportunity. I'm also delighted to say that through the family there was a GoFundMe page provided. But the monetary contributions that our Dads of Gawler group totalled nearly $2,000. Now, we're talking about 12 to 15 families here who gave up a lot of their funds to support this dad. Some of the dads actually took the dad out for tea a couple of nights so Mum could have a break, but also then Dad could have a break too. We have grown exponentially. We have been delighted to invite and meet several new and first-time fathers and their new babies, Trav being one of our newest dads here tonight. And we're now being supported volunteer community events coordinator Zoe, who's one of the mums of our dads, to help support the group with promotion of the group in the wider Gawler community and region, which has meant a marked increase of dads attending at our Sunday morning meetups. And we're also partnering with the Gawler and Barossa Child and Family Health teams to distribute their new dad bags, which are given to dads with important support service information for fathers and also information for the Dads of Gawler group. And that's through the Child and Family Health Service. And that was a project they started last year, and we've now tapped into that. They're distributing across South Australia 8,000 of these bags, which will have Dads group organisation information, but I'll also be able to provide dad bags to all the dads that come through our centre every week with our information about the Dads of Gawler group in particular. And as I said earlier, in Term 1, a free 6-week online mental health support program for fathers was also offered to our group, and 3 of our dads took that up. The program aims to support them to have a greater understanding of mental health issues for fathers and skills to provide vital support for any dads who may be experiencing or struggling with depression or with any general mental health concerns. It also provides support for those dads who might feel isolated as well. And as we support dads, we support the whole family, and that's what we're all about, is that early intervention and really providing a space for families to be able to expand their networks, their social capital, but also to provide a space where they can just be a dad and have a chat with other dads and share their life experiences, which is really, really important. In the presentation pack that I've given you, there is a breakdown of the costing for 2026 to 2027, and we're pleased to say it hasn't gone up. be nice to get some more, but we understand what we get. We're really, really appreciative of. And thank you for this opportunity. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any now. Thanks. Oh, there was a little video too I just wanted to show. One of the events that we do, the community events during the year. I don't know if they've got it on YouTube. One of our dads put together a fabulous little video for the Man with the Pram event. I don't know if we've got that on.
We don't have that, sorry.
Oh, didn't get it? Okay. Anyway, go onto YouTube and look up Will Shave and have a look at the Man with the Pram video. It's just fabulous. Funny story I'll share with you just very quickly about that. He was walking along videoing himself as he's working a pram, but of course there was no baby in the pram, so people were looking at him quite strangely, like he's talking to his baby that's not there. And then he kept getting bombarded by magpies while he was trying to do the video. But it's an excellent video, and it shows the opportunities that we can provide too for our dads as well. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Kim. Is there any council members, do you have any questions or?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Kim. Are you able to just to talk to a little bit more closely on that membership? So when we first started this journey and how it's grown and that membership number, are you able to talk to that?
Yes, I think because there's a greater need for supporting young families and the growth in our area too of new families that are moving into the area. Because we're fortunate enough in our centre to have child and family health services that do come in. They're usually coming in with their first 8-week visit with their new baby, and more often than not there's a dad comes along with them because they're still on leave. I think what's the most important thing about it and how it has grown is the word of mouth from the different dads, how they meet up with each other outside of the group as well, and how they've grown that network and that village. So that they celebrate each other's children's birthdays at different occasions. They'll actually meet outside of coming, fortnightly on a Sunday. But they're also now, I guess, feeling confident and encouraged enough to invite other families and other dads to come in. So I'm in a fortunate position where I do get to see the new dads coming in into the centre. However, there's more to it than that, and it's a larger program that we're working towards with Dad's Group organisation at a higher level. I won't worry you with that because that's something that we're hoping the federal, state and philanthropic organisations will take on board in the near future. But the group itself has grown. We've now got a Dad's Group up in Mount Barker, and that came from meeting up and meeting some of our dads as well. So they've now started a new group as well. We have what we call leaders' huddles every Friday at lunchtime where we get together, and we're providing space for our dads, any of the dads, to come on board and share those experiences and listen to hear what's going on. There are some exciting things coming up for Dad's Group. The new web page for the Dad's Group organisation, and also an app that they're trying to put together, which will allow dads then to connect any time that they want, if they need mental health support or any other supports that they might need for themselves and their families. It's at their fingertips, which I think is a brilliant initiative that's going to be coming along by the end of the year, hopefully. I think it's a space, we've provided a space where dads can just be dads, where they come in and there's no judgment, there's no criticism, there's no stigma attached. Their dads coming in and sharing their experiences with each other, just having a chat. I usually am in the kitchen. I cook them a hot brekkie. That doesn't mean that means more dads are going to come along, but we do that too. I don't know, you might be better to ask one of the dads. Trav, you want to say a word? Or Rob's been coming for a long, long time. His little boy Archer is now 7, yeah. What brings you to Dad's Group? Quickly.
When Archer was born, all the help from the hospital was all based around the mums, and there was nothing for the fathers. And then Archer started going to kindy. Then I found out about Dad's Group, and there was actually people out there that was going through the same stuff that I was going through, but I was going through it alone because I didn't know anything about it, where I could actually go and talk to people who know exactly what's happening because it's happening to them as well. And then we could bounce off of one another and we could actually nut stuff out and make life a lot easier for each other. So it's just a beautiful thing to have.
Thanks, Rob. Trav, do you want, as he's one of our newest dads, and he's just done a leadership course on Dads Group too.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. I can only speak, obviously, for my personal experience within Dad's Group. A fair little of what Rob said there. It's very, very uncommon, I find, for when you become a dad to get that question of, are you okay? Like you alluded to there, Rob, it's very centred around mum, and rightfully so. You know, I'm not discrediting that at all. I've seen my wife and her journey, and I think that's very important. But to have that additional support there to just go, hang on a minute, you know, other people are actually going through this. Like, we don't all have to put up that image of having it all together, because you can't as a parent and as a fully employed person as well, and any other commitments you have. So to be able to have that space where you can just come in and be yourself, have that relatability, has been just a true blessing for me in my short time within the group. And I certainly think the early intervention piece is really, really key for this sort of group as well. Because the second we get on top of these things, you know, the stigma around mental health, particularly around men, the better that filters onto our young people, and the better our community benefits because of that awareness, you know, on a universal perspective. So that's my 2 cents on the matter, I guess. Thank you.
Thanks, Trav, and thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Nathan. And I, again, thank the council for their funding that they've provided over the last 2 years. We're very, very grateful, and we know it's a strict budget, but thank you, and we're hopeful. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thank you. So obviously tonight is about getting feedback and making sure that we understand what the community wants. But realistically, the most beneficial feedback that we can get is when it's actually quite specific. So the plan was to do actually a table exercise, but I figured that considering the number of people here, that we actually might still do the exercise and ask the questions. However, we'll actually do it potentially like as a bit more of an open free-flowing rather than actually doing it on your tables. Is everyone okay with that one? So, or do people want to do it on the tables? Nope. Okay, so one of the things is, as I said, obviously we want to be, when we have some specific, thank you, when we have some specific feedback, it's actually easier for council or council to actually deal with that information rather than vague feedback. So I think if we could just have the staff up with some microphones, in thinking about what has been presented tonight and what's been done with regard to in the annual business plan, I think it is that thing about what actually matters most. What would you wait to change given the issues that Chris raised with regard to where you have got a higher inflation figure than what we actually first anticipated back when we actually built the draft budget. We don't really know how long, I suppose, the political unrest is actually going to last and what that flow-on impact that's actually going to have. Yes, we've got the immediate effect of fuel, but we don't know how much that is going to get embedded into other commodities and other inputs into the things that we actually do. So it is that thing about the fact that if we do have to defer services or if we do have to defer projects, what other types of projects do you think from a community perspective that we should wait? Where we should maintain or where we should actually improve, you know, improve in the level of service that we actually provide, or even in our day-to-day operations, what we should actually reduce that effort into, and then any other ideas that you actually have for savings or partnerships or opportunities that may present to us. So I will open it up to the floor if anyone wants to speak, or whether I'll give a couple of minutes for you to have a think about it, and then we'll just come back and have a bit of a chat. Or we just move on to questions and answers. I suppose that's I'm in your hands. I see people writing, so I will give a couple of minutes for people to write down their thoughts, and then we'll just go around. Then we'll just go around the room. All right, does anyone want to kick it off with what matters most, or what could wait or change? Thank you.
Gavin Lorna. as I drive through other towns, and I quite regularly drive through the Barossa, I love going up the Riverland, up through the Clare Valley, drive through the main streets. Really inviting, colourful, vibrant, makes you feel like getting out of the car and stopping and just walking up that main street and looking around. Many years ago, I put a submission or a suggestion through to council how the main street could be improved with nice planted boxes and flowers. At that stage, out in front of the Prince Albert, there was 2 boxes with 2 old olive trees. That was always wrecked and so forth, and the town was full of graffiti. Put a full submission in, I costed it, how it could be done. I worked out how it could be serviced on a regular basis. I even had Milton Vidula spoke to him about it, was quite happy to support the town and the project with supplying of fertiliser and plants. Submitted it. To this day, no report, nothing, no acknowledgement even on the letter. I think that people say, well, we just drive through Gawler and go to the Barossa. You know, what's to make them stop in the town? I think we could really lift the town with landscaping. It doesn't have to be big, but some nice planted boxes up and down the street and have them looked after and maintained, and it can be done. We've got a graffiti program which I was on for 11 years from there. You know, we could use those chappies in there, and it's got water containers on there. I'd be quite happy to go and get the ute once or twice a week during the summer months and water them and replant them. I'm a keen gardener. It doesn't take a lot, and you would get the garden groups in there, and you put that out, and you would get people who would support it. I'm sure you'd only have to go to Bunnings and say, look, each year I want 20 or 30 punnets and replant them up and so forth like that. Let's be proud of the town. Let's people say, gee, this is a nice place to drive through. So that's just, I would think, whether a suggestion goes anywhere, but I'd like to think some thought could be given to enhancing the town.
I think that's a great idea. The concept, the bit I just talked to a little bit is the town centre structure plan. It's the draft that's just come out. One of the things that's trying to achieve is how do we make the CBD, or Murray Street in particular, vibrant, attractive, functioning better and more appealing? How do we keep people in to spend money and return economic outcome? So I don't know how long ago it was you put in that suggestion. How long ago was it? Right? Well, I think we're right in the right moment to actually take some action around the concept about what you're talking about. So thank you for sharing it with us. Really appreciate it.
Could you imagine coming into the town and the roundabout, the first one to come into town? I think the council spent hundreds of thousands of dollars putting some gravel in the centre. Could you imagine a roundabout with petunias and flowers and shrubs, and then you come up the main street with planted boxes and flowers and shrubs? You go to the big roundabout out of Williston with all the Northern Connected people coming in. Garden, flowers, trees, shrubs. It doesn't take a lot to maintain them, you know. We could really make the place jump and say, wow, this is good.
Am I just able to respond to that, if that's okay? Thank you, Gavin, for that. I think the point that Chris was touching on in Town Centre framework, probably glossed over it a little bit. The good thing about what I think we're doing in that space is around the subzoning side of things. So actually looking at the prioritisation of beautification on the main street, not only Main Street but also High Street as well. And we're trying to turn around and say, hey, if there is an opportunity for development, what could that look like? Are we talking about accommodation precincts? Are we talking about retail space and the like? And what is the incentives that we can potentially show with our planning and our strategies to say, hey, developer, if you guys invest here, we actually have some projects that we're looking at that we could potentially muck around with and prioritise as well and partner and activate. I think we've got a historic example of where council's town centre last town centre plan picked up and identified Walker Place, and it invested in an upgrade with the hope that you might see some private investment all happen at the same time. However, I don't think we were clear enough on what we'd love to be able to see more broadly and how that activation of the Main Street would work through your Main Street and your Julian Terrace and your High Street, your corridors and all the bigger picture sort of thinking. And that's where the town centre structure plan is actually picking up some of those beautification ideas and how they can actually activate spaces that otherwise aren't. So not only are we walking on a beautiful main street that has nice planter boxes, nice places to sit, but they have the businesses backing them in as well. So I think that's part of the piece of the puzzle here that I think we're really excited to go out for community consultation on, to show things like multi-level buildings done right.
Does anyone else want to put forward anything? Does anyone actually have any questions of the information that has been presented tonight that they want to ask council members or any in relation to, I suppose, the budget or the projects that we have presented as part of the draft plan? Yep, Ian.
Thanks, Sharon. Yep, I've come prepared with a few questions.
Yep.
But first of all, could I just make an observation about CPI? Chris, I think in mentioning CPI, and you've mentioned it as well, Sharon, you've mentioned it in the context that it's increasing from where you thought it was, 3.3, you're now saying, I think you quoted 4.9. And I think you're mentioning that because the implications it can have in the budget, i.e. you might look to increase the rates, there's a possibility, it's only a draft budget, or you might look to cut in order to cover costs. But could I just point out this fact, and these are today's figures. You're quoting the March quarter. The March quarter is 4.07. What you predicated on was the December 25 quarter was 3.2. If you go the quarter before that, it was 2.2. The quarter before that, 1.7. The reason I'm mentioning that is if you leave that hanging, that people think, oh, CPI is 4.9. It's not 4.9. That's a quarterly figure misquoted. It's actually 4.2, right? And these quarterly figures, which means you've got to look at annual CPA, right? Rise, when you're looking at impact on budgets. So that's the first thing I'd mention. And CPI goes up and down. So you've got to look at the annualised annual. You can't just predicate and say, well, 4.9, look at that, aren't we good? We're only 3.3 or 4.3. First question. Is this meeting tonight, in addition to the 60-minute meeting minimum that must be provided at the special budget council meeting coming up?
No, this isn't in addition. So under the Act, we have a choice of either having a public meeting for at least an hour, or we can actually allocate an hour within a council meeting. So so this is our requirement under the Act for that public meeting to get allow members of the public to come back and provide feedback to the council members.
So I was understanding with the regulations that when you actually are about to finalise the budget, you have to allow for a minimum of 1 hour for submissions at that council meeting. And it says a council meeting. This is not a council meeting.
No, there's you can have a public meeting, or you don't have to have both.
So you're not planning any more than at that meeting?
So essentially, we will not have we have a council meeting on the 9th, which is a special council meeting where the council will consider all the submissions that we received, Obviously, as part of the meeting procedures, people can come in and give a deputation, but we will not be providing an hour in that meeting for people just to come in and provide feedback as that verbal, because we, as I said, the legislation allows for a public meeting, such as what we're doing tonight, or an allocation of at least an hour in a council meeting.
Disappointing. And I think you must be disappointed with the promotion you've done. You've essentially got 3 people here, possibly prepared to talk about and give you feedback. Last year we I can't hear you.
And reflecting on personal issues?
Are you chairing the meeting, are you?
No, I'm just... I was just saying there's a great opportunity to provide feedback now, and I think it would be great to do that.
We're in the question session. I've got feedback to give. I've got a submission to give. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. But as I was saying, you guys have got banners up. You've been promoting it, Facebook. You've got 3 people. And I can tell you now the reason for that is we filled the gallery last year. We had a petition. And I think the editor's editorial is quite correct. The reason that people aren't here tonight is they just don't believe the feedback will be listened to. I wasn't going to come myself, but I thought, well, I'll give it a try. I don't think for 1 minute you'll listen to me or it'll make any difference, but I've got some feedback to give. But I'm at the question section at the moment, Mr. Solomon. And please don't interrupt me. Do it through the chair. You know about meeting procedure.
Okay.
How many additional staff are being employed in this budget?
As set out in Chris's presentation, so there is 2 additional staff members in relation to the enhancing of the town, I suppose the town amenity. So there's 2 additional staff there. And then there is another additional staff member that is part of our planning team from a development to do a compliance role to actually ensure the enforcement from that development to make sure that I suppose the developers are doing the right thing as well. So essentially 3 FTEs ongoing. The plan actually puts in the fact that we won't be recruiting them from day one. So there is some allowances from memory, I think from about November, December, or was it October for the enhancing the town, and then January for the compliance officer. So yes, so three essentially is in the budget for increased service level.
Thank you. You talk about 2 developments, one being the walking trail at the Aspire development and the Jack Cooper Reserve play space. Can you tell us how much of the money that is going towards that project has come from developer contributions?
No money will come from developer contributions for those projects, those particular projects.
Okay. The reason I ask that is because I know full well that Aspire, because of the deeds and the development requirements, contributed money for that walking trail, but at the time council used it to buy the rusty fingernail sculptures instead, and in doing so cut down 300 plus trees. And that was money that was meant to go for a walking trail or a playground. Developers do submit for that, but you've clarified that no developers' money is in that. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Final question. As Sharon said the other night in her presentation at the community meeting, which was to encourage people to run for council, I think Sharon put up a very interesting slide. I certainly screenshot it. It was a slide that pointed out what councils are required to do for their communities by legislation, by law. versus what councils can choose to do for their communities. And I think you touched on that again tonight, Chris. Of the mandated must-do from your slide, Sharon, it says roads, streets, stormwater, maintaining assets, household waste, etc. And then on the optional, it listed these: library, information services, recreation and sport, swimming pools, leisure facilities, community facilities, halls, tourism activities, water resources, economic development, all of those being optional, not mandatory. So my question is, regarding the draft 2026-27 budget, what percentage of the budget is devoted to the must-dos versus what percentage is devoted to the optionals, discretionaries?
I think this, I'll actually probably go back to this slide here. I would sit there and say most of the funding in relation to that is actually provided to the mandatory. So obviously that infrastructure management, which is predominantly our roads and that. A portion of our trees and parks, a portion of the $7 million is like our tree parks, playgrounds and all that. You would take out of that $7 million, and I don't have the numbers on top of me, the pool component and the sports centre, which would be that. Waste management we are required to do. There are some, I suppose it's even under the community health and aged, essentially, so some of that is mandatory stuff because we actually have to do the immunisation and environmental health aspects, which is actually under the Public Health Act. Regulatory services, a lot of that, and planning, a lot of that is actually under that. So I would sit there and say probably off the top of my head, around about 75-80% is actually spent on the mandatory stuff. A lot of the, I suppose, the discretionary stuff is sitting in the community events, heritage and culture, a bit in the community because that's where the libraries are sitting, economic development. So I think, and then even in relation to the governance and communication administration, obviously, as a business and as council, while people would sit there and say, oh, maybe that's discretionary, but essentially we can't provide a lot of the essential services that we have to actually provide if we don't have those back office support. That's actually in that governance as well. So I would sit there and say that a large portion of our budget actually does go on the mandatory items or services that we do need to deliver.
Sharon, have you ever done a real analysis and produced a pie chart? I know you're sort of picking the figures, but you know, any of us that look at this, we look at the amount you're going to spend on the pool. We know you invest in the library, and that's library staff as well. There's a lot, the sport and rec centre, all of those fit into the discretionary. Yes, we like them, but they are the discretionary.
Yep.
Could I ask you to produce for us and to send it out so we can see somehow an actual pie chart that says, when you've actually looked at it, of the budget, this chunk of the pie is mandatory and this is discretionary?
Yep.
But that would be really helpful, because I suspect there's more discretionary than you perhaps recognise. That's my questions anyway.
Yep,
Thank you.
That's fine. I'm more than happy to do that. Is anyone, any other questions? Hang on, wait for the microphone.
Well, I don't need that.
Yes, you do.
Hey, welcome. Sure. Welcome. I don't know who you are, but I'm Sambo, right?
We're streaming it, so you need
Oh, gee. See the boss. Tonight in this room, you've heard from our CEO, our mayor, our deputy mayors here, 8 staff, and they are the who's who and who's who of this town. And I've been yelling for a long time, why doesn't the public come? We have the managing director of the Bunyip, our Gawler paper here tonight. It's been advertised. I would love you 3 gentlemen here tonight if you could tell these people in this room that look after this town, why do you think the public is not here, please? Because we want to know, we want more public to be here with us.
I know you do. And Brian, thank you for answering that question. You have got banners at the entrance to the town. You've had them across the street. You've had adverts in the Bunyip. You've had the mayor and the CEO put the 2-page spreads in the Bunyip. You've been bombarding the TOG Facebook page. Have a look at your own engagement. I did it again tonight. What have you got? I think 5 or 6 on the mayor's invitation. There's either none or 1 on the others. On some of them, when you could get feedback, you don't even have the comment section on there. So the answer, Brian, is a cynicism has grown amongst the community. The only reason the gallery was full last year was because of me, all right? As much as this council would hate to admit that, the year before, in 2024, I was the only person who attended the 1-hour session, Sharon. I was the only person.
Yep.
Mayor Redman and Henry Annette. You were there, Mayor. Oh, he's not listening. Yeah, he switched off again. You were there, Nathan. And of course they are. And that's the sort of comment that's just lovely. But answering your question, Brian, I came along and I didn't know you had to have a 1-hour mandated session. So I applied for a delegation. I got to the 5-minute mark and the mayor shut me down. I asked for 30 seconds more. I'm the only one in the gallery. And the mayor said no. I then went home. And then I get a message from Shane Bailey. He says, are you watching the meeting, Ian? I'm watching it. You had to sit there for 1 hour and twiddle your thumbs. I could have been asking a million questions. So I saw the cynicism in that. The community did. So last year, I activated on Facebook. And of course, it was alarming because I was letting people know you were planning 6%. Well, that really hit the button. Those 2 ladies came to me and said, how do we do it, Ian? We talked about a petition. They went down the street, those wonderful women, and they got over 300 signatures, I think. And then we filled the gallery. And what they demanded was that you do not raise rates above CPI. And they gave you all the reasons. You had any number of people. It was impassioned last year. And they spoke from their heart. And they told you how hard they are doing it. And they pleaded with you not to go above 3%, which is what it was at the time. And they got 4.9. And they were cynical on the night at the way the meeting went. And they've been cynical ever since. And they've kept in communication with me, and there's been feedback. And I even tried, I reposted your stuff. I can't get people to come. And they tell me, Brian, it's because people believe this council is arrogant and it does not listen. And I know I've been here myself many times. And some of you guys are on... Switched off? No. Some of you guys are on your phone. You don't make eye contact. You don't listen. Your body language is awful. And it's a reality. I know it's confronting to hear it, but you ask the question, and that's my observation, that people are cynical. Just look at the feedback that goes on Facebook posts when you do leave the comments on there. I don't know if you guys even look at your own data. It's telling you something that people are not engaging. Now, you can change that. And, you know, if I ever get to my presentation, and if there's anyone left and they haven't run off, I'll give you some hints as to what I think you can do. You've got an election coming up.
Yep. If there's any other member of the public want to ask a question?
Can I just reply to Brian? He directed. Yep. Never been to one of these before and thought, yeah, I'll come along tonight and just see what happens. And I applaud Chris and obviously the team. I have now got a perfect understanding and a well-informed understanding of where exactly the dollars are going. I've been treasurers and I've been secretaries and chairmen of various groups and church groups. Start at a meeting and you start talking budgets, they just shut down. It's complicated. It's facts, it's figures. They don't want to know. Ian is one of the few that really wants to study them and so forth. I tend to look at what's the bottom line. Yeah, we got some money. Good, we can carry on. But that I would love to see the whole town of Gawler seeing this project that was put there tonight. I know exactly where the money is going and what the council is trying to do. So I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one else has got any questions, so we do have Ian who has registered for to make a verbal submission. Oh, sorry.
Is it possible just to ask for staff to highlight a couple of things which have been raised with me by people who couldn't be here tonight? Is that?
Yep.
I thought just because I didn't give the appearance that people don't care, but there's a couple of things which I feel like might be worth mentioning here. So particularly someone in Gawler East who mentioned to me, who's an older woman, who mentioned to me about footpaths and accessibility. Again, so are you able to tell us a little bit about what we're doing in regard to footpaths? The second thing, someone talked to me about verge maintenance, which I think may have been covered off with Chris, if we could have a little about that. And also about playgrounds moving forward. We've got the one playground in there, but over the next couple of years, what does that look like in terms of redoing all of our playgrounds?
I'll start with the last question first, if that's okay. In relation to the playground, so we do actually have our playground strategy, and so the delivery of the playgrounds are essentially set out and in line with that program. And from memory, and David, jump in if you can help, pretty much we do have a schedule where we would actually allocate funding for a playground each year as part of our open space program. That may be a combination of a renewal program, like a playground renewal, or it may actually be a new playground because we think that in a particular area it might be actually a growth area. So I would refer, if we can grab the details, we're more than happy to respond to that person and publish some of this information on our budget page, anyway, the answers to the questions, but referring to the playground strategy to set that out. In relation to, and that playground strategy is on our website. Yep, so it is, so that will give you the forward plan on where we are with regard to our playgrounds. So with regard to
and I should say the reason I ask as well is because I'm aware, for example, last night we had 40 views after the meeting, 40 people were tuned in. Of course, I'm aware of the playground strategy and stuff, but I think it would be worth mentioning, particularly footpaths, just in a public setting, so that people online here can see that as well.
I'm just trying to find the information that's in our pack. I know that we have around about 750,000 included in our budget for new footpaths, so that's actually in areas across the town where we don't actually have footpaths. And from memory, are they lit? I'm looking for an annual business plan. You got the list?
If I just jump in and help you out here, Sharon, I've just got the list out of our publication. I'll just read it out for the benefit of everybody. So the extra 750 I alluded to in my presentation. I've got Dawson Road from the bus stop near Clark Road to the rail crossing near Dysart Road. Queen Street from High Street to Princess Street. High Street from Main North Road to Murray Road. Jane Street from Edward Street to Chamberlain Street. Bond Street from Jane Street to Davey Street. Davey Street from Princess Street to Main North Road. Couch Street from Davis Street to the end. And Edward Street from Jane Street to Davey Street. That's just the additional 750. And if I can just talk in general terms, indicative program as follows. A shared path along the South Parra River from Patterson Terrace to the Reed Play Space. Works include, so that's already there, but it needs work. Heavy patching in areas affected by tree roots, crack sealing throughout and updating the line marking and signage. Todd Street, northern side from Murray Street to Reed Street with asphalt. Reed Street both sides, from Todd Street to Moore Street / Light Square with asphalt, and 2 new ramps on the western side and on the eastern side. Princess Street from Main North Road to Barker Road, and renew poor condition asphalt with new concrete to match balance of street, and other sites subject to confirmation of condition and customer data.
And also, obviously, the Aspire walking trail is part of that program as well. And then as part of the Finniss Street renewal, there's actually a footpath renewal component of that. So across the board, so obviously there's 750,000 of new footpaths. I don't have the, and then obviously we've got our renewal program, and then there's other projects that we've sort of, they're more than just the footpaths, but we've actually enhanced them. So that's the Aspire. And then obviously the Verge program, and it's not necessarily Verge program, but part of that enhancing the streetscape and the amenity of the town actually also incorporates that increased Verge maintenance around the town, but also on our medians and all that sort of stuff as well.
Just go to the mic for a second. One thing that was remiss of me to mention as part of that town enhancement program was it will enable us to bring in-house over the next couple of years some external contracts that are currently delivered by not our staff, by external contractors. David will have the figures. There we go. So there's a $30,000 contract in year one. 45. And then in second year, it goes to $100,000 per annum savings on works that are currently delivered by contractors at the minute. So that's the other side of that equation. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And also, I think it's worth, just if you can indulge for one moment, just saying that I think it's budget time is so excellent because it covers off on so many things that people raise with us throughout the year. And I hope that certainly my other councillors feel this as well, that asking someone to be wholly interested in everything budget is quite a task. But there are so many things which I hear every day which are really important that make up the budget as the year goes on, and the things that people care about. I mean, looking even tonight, just at things like the dads group, you know, that's something which is not necessarily, it's not mandatory that we do that, but it has such an impact on the community, and I think that's they're very important things for us to look at, and not just look at feedback which is received in isolation to the budget, but also the feedback we get throughout the year about the services and things that we do and the importance that people put on them. Certainly I get them a lot, and you know, if you wait for them to come in and yell in your face, you probably miss the point.
And I think that that's also important in that the budget is more than just what the new projects that we're delivering each year, and it is that thing that a lot of the budget, a majority of the budget, I would sit there and say about, especially of the operating budget, around 90% of it is the day-to-day services that we continue to deliver, and whether we deliver them because they're mandatory as a result of our legislative requirements, or whether they are services that the community over time have actually grown to, have requested and have grown to value those services. And we know that not every person is going to use every single service that we actually provide, and that is, I think that's the good thing about local government, is the breadth of service that we actually provide. We're one organisation that, as Chris said, there's probably around about 120 services that we provide. It's a very dynamic, very diverse organisation, and again, it is that balance, and we know that we're not going to meet everyone's needs at every point in time, but it does come back to that balance of making sure what we actually provide, and we do respond to those to that community, and from that perspective as well. So, sorry. Yep. Sorry.
Thank you, Trav Dittmar.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I guess the playground point sort of prompted this one from me, and I think this comes under a couple of umbrellas. I'd specifically talk to Apex Park and Colonia Park as examples, and seemingly unrelated, but let me get there, bring in touch the cost of living pressures that we're all feeling, and some obviously more than others, and there are some socio-economic issues within the population, within the town, as I'm sure we're all aware. One thing that I've found commonly in my own experiences with my own child at playgrounds and having talked to other parents as well is, yes, we've got these great facilities in these parks and specifically, the upgrades around Apex Park and whatnot. However, there is a population of the town who create a sense of that lack of safety due to their own, there's independent issues, and we could go into depth all day on those things. I guess my question is there any intention within the upcoming budget to address those specifically in terms of, yes, we've got a gate at Apex Park, but a gate doesn't do so much. Anyone can open a gate, you know what I mean? So I'd just like to talk to you, I guess, perhaps anything in place to address those who are doing it tough in the socio-economic sense, but also the general safety of the population who want to utilise these spaces.
I'm not going to downplay the difficulty in trying to work through that one. It is fair to say it is high on our agenda of issues we need to get across. It's not primarily a local government responsibility, but of course it plays out in a local government space. There are a number of things we currently do. So we interact as part of what's called the Red Room Project, which is a partnership with a whole lot of parties that come together, police, Salvation Army, ourselves, and a lot of the support agencies, where we try to gain an understanding of how many people we have in our community are doing it tough. And I think, these aren't, don't quote me on these numbers, please, but say 80%, I think, are accessing service and are receiving support and are perhaps on the road to coming through their challenges. There's a component that are exhibiting some of the antisocial behaviours that some people are experiencing. We haven't got a magic solution, but as a council, we're continuing to look at ways to help manage that. So I haven't given you a solution, but I wanted you to leave tonight knowing that it is something that we're actively working on. It probably needs to rely on multi-parties coming together. It can't just be a council solution because it's a very complex matter. But please know it is something that my team are constantly managing, but then looking at what can we do better. So I haven't given you a total solution, but yeah, please know it is high on our radar.
Do you have a quick one, Brian?
Thanks, Sharon. And to Ian and look, it's great to hear what you said, and to the gentleman back here and so forth. I think one of the things I've got to say to you, Sharon, and your team, this lady up here is just working her butt off, and we all in council, staff and elected members, are so very, very proud of what they're doing. We're also letting the community know through our Gawler paper, the Bunyip has been fantastic, and we spend a lot of money in there, but we believe it's worthwhile. There was 2 full pages the other week saying and telling our community exactly what we're doing. Now, I don't know, but I buy 10 bunyips every week and I give them to people that say, oh, no, the bunyip's costing too much now and I can't afford it. And I've got 10 people that I take it to, which they may not be listening, but they're windbags. They reckon that extra bloody 10 cents is too much or something. We as elected members are trying our best to get our community to come along on the train that we are working with. I just can't believe when you drive around the town and up around Gawler East, all those brand new bitumen roads, that's a lot of money being spent. I asked so many of the elected members, how many calls did you get about, oh, wow, council's doing a great job. You've seen the new bitumen roads up there. Have you seen the new playgrounds and all these sort of things? So it's very unrewarding being staff and elected members in a town when people won't tell you. So people like you three that are here today, if you can give us any clues as to how much better we do, I mean, you know, Coke... Eh?
We haven't had one submission yet, and I've come with a submission. All we've heard is councillors...
Oh, that's all right, but don't interrupt me. You told the Deputy Mayor don't interrupt you.
Okay.
So anyway,
So-
I'm just trying to say, we're trying to do our best and that sort of thing. We just want our community to support us and read and look when they drive around, see the roads that are fixed up, see the footpaths that are fixed up and all this sort of stuff, because we're doing the best we can under the leadership of Chris and his staff. So I just want to say thank you for telling us what you've told us, but we're trying to the best we can, and we need to get more community to be involved with us.
On that note, if there's no other questions, I will give the microphone to Ian, who did register to make a verbal submission. So, yes, so...
Okay. Observation. I don't know how many submissions you've got back on your budget, but that is the purpose of tonight. You've marketed this as for feedback. I don't know how many people have written in. As far as I'm concerned, I think I'm the only one with a submission. I've heard questions. I've heard a presentation, wonderful presentation from the Dads group. Not a problem with that, love that. Questions, but I think I'm the only submission. And here we are now at just after 8:30, and the majority of this meeting so far has been you guys spruiking your budget, questions being asked. I mean, the stuff I heard from Mr. Solomon, that should have been happening at your debate at the council meeting, but you've taken up another big chunk of this, and then someone else comes and defends it. So far, this has not been a meeting about budget feedback. It's been a meeting about spinning, telling us, and asking questions. Where is the feedback you crave? It's all over your Facebook page. You're saying for it, Brian, you want feedback. Well, I think I'm the only one that's going to give you some feedback.
We have received submissions, and
how many have you received, Sharon?
So essentially, I think about 15.
15 written submissions.
Yep.
Stunning.
So yes. So, and I just want to sit there and say, so the purpose of tonight was, one of the aspects was to actually receive feedback and provide the opportunity for verbal submissions, but it was also an opportunity for us to present our budget as well. So,
okay.
So that was the intent of the session, but
Okay. Look, I think you guys live in a bubble and you don't want to see it. This has not been a good feedback session. And I'm going to give you some critical feedback, but that doesn't seem to be what you want to hear. But I would have thought that is a really important part of the process. If you're really going to be serving us, you need to hear some critical feedback. And that's never what you want to hear. So, and I'm not here because I think you're actually going to listen. I don't think you will. And I think any feeling is you won't. But anyway, so here we have another rate hike above CPI. And as you've read my letter to the editor, I've used the term, it's a nothing burger. It's being spun as if it's a lot, but it's not, in my view and the view of many. You list what you call notable projects. Now, this is your words, right? And you've talked about many of them tonight, Brian. Notable projects. And I agree with you. The honesty is there. The stuff is up there for people to see. But you have to actually look at the numbers and cut through the spin to work out what this budget's doing. And it's pretty well a nothing burger. The stuff that you've listed, and in your 2-page spreads and on your Facebook, is the stuff that we've done in council every year and that we have to do. And that is maintenance of the pool. I've not been on council for one budget, and I was here for 7 years, where we didn't have to spend huge amounts of money on the pool. That's always in the budget. I've never had a budget where you haven't had to seal roads. You do know this is getting into the conspiracy theories, don't you? And I've been here before when my microphone was cut off, and it is getting the conspiracies. So sealing roads, every year we've budgeted for that. You've got some in this budget. Footpaths, every year we've done that. You've got a list, you're just crossing them off the list. So the things that you've listed here, including this year, every 4 years you've got to spend money on a council election, yeah, all of that is standard stuff. Where are the big projects? Where are the big, sexy, interesting projects? Where is the aspiration to get the tour down under? Now, you told me, Councillor Davies, you said, hang off last year, Ian, it'll come up. And I took you on and said, you don't have to pay any money, but it's going to come up. We've gone 18 months, it didn't happen. You guys have your own motion and you didn't follow it through. You did nothing with the gather round. Where's the exciting stuff for the people in this community? There's none of that in your budget. I want you to look at what our neighbours are doing. And I pay attention to what's happening in Light and the Barossa. I look at the events they have. I look at the big infrastructure things they're doing. And they keep their rates pretty moderate. The Bunyip, we were mentioning the Bunyip. Bunyip had a great article here on Playford. Last year, the rates rise was 2.5% below CPI. This year, it's 3.5%. But if you look at the list of big, major projects they're either initiating or finishing, it's huge. Now, they call themselves a growth council. You call yourself a growth council, and yet not getting anything from that. In my view, there are 4 reasons why you keep raising rates well above the CPI and continue to deliver nothing burger budgets that you spin as if they're a whopper with a lot. Number 1, the tail wagging the dog syndrome, where the POG administration, the CEO and his team, they control the budget process instead of the elected members. Now pay attention to this. This is historically how it works, and it's flawed. What happens is you get given a draft budget, and then you spend months arguing over mere morsels that you're going to move above the line or below the line. You never address the big structural issues, and it's because it's done the wrong way around. If you did it the proper way around, you would do this. You as elected members, Brian, Isaac, Cody, you would be reading, and Mr. Hughes over there, you'd be reading the room with your town. You'd know, Miss Hennessy, beg your pardon. You'd be reading the room, community. You would know that they're struggling financially. You would know that they're calling out for no increase or a low increase. And what you could do at the beginning of the process is say to Chris Cowley, we want you to develop a budget when you start your budget cycle of no percent, 3% maximum. Do not go above CPI. And you give us back a draft budget based on that. Then you do what you're doing now. You have a look at what that contains. And it makes the administration cut their cloth. But as it is now, the power is all with the CEO and his team because they set the budget. They have their budget meetings. Andrew comes in, Dave comes in, Sharon comes in, their departments come in, they put their wish lists in, they have their argy-bargy. I know how it works. I've done high school budgets exactly the same way with all the different divisions. And then they've had the argy-bargy, you served up a draft budget, and then you're meant to fight over the crumbs. and it never works, and you never make structural change. You're just tinkering at the edges. So there's your first thing. Reverse that around. Back when your budget cycle starts, you set and say, oh, we do not want a budget above CPI or above 2%. And you make the admin earn their big bucks. There's your first. Second one, historically excessive staff numbers. Now, you will say that you inherited that from the Anat Redmond regime, and you will say you've done some changes, but the fact remains you have huge trouble with staff. And as we've learnt tonight, you're going to add 3 more. Now, you do realise that if you take a conservative cost of $100,000 for an employee, because I'm taking into account everything you've got to do for the add-ons, work cover, superannuation, etc., you have to add 40 new rate-paying homes per year to pay for 1 staff member. And historically, when I was on council, they were adding at least 4 staff members per year. Every claimed bit of growth was being eaten up by staff. And you're adding 3. So that's 120 new dwellings have to come on board this year just to service those 3 staff. So there's your second problem with your budget. You've got an excessive staff bubble. 3, I believe you're spending too much on the discretionary part of your budget and not enough on your basics you're mandated. People screaming out, roads, footpaths, they want that traffic that comes down in front of Faster Pastor. They want that fixed, and that's only going to get worse as Concordia comes online. They want that structural stuff done. They want to park and ride at Gawler Central to accommodate all the traffic that's coming in to get electrified railway line. That's only going to get worse. There's nothing in your budget addressing those major traffic snarls that exist already and are going to get worse. I don't even know if you guys go out and stand out in front of Faster Pasture and see the traffic right the way up. You start adding to that, the people from Concordia, they'll be up to Cheek Avenue. And that's really bad because I live on Cheek Avenue. So you've got to pay attention to that. But all the people from Springwood now that want to go to Adelaide, they don't use that Gawler East Link Road. The people coming from Concordia, Barossa South, coming down from Roseworthy, there's 2 places they want to go to Adelaide via 2 means, the electrified railway line or the Northern Expressway. And there's nothing in your budget to address that. And that's the one thing people have been screaming at you about. Through letters to the editor, through articles, you haven't addressed it. And the 4th area, and man, could I expand on this? It's the massive waste, and particularly the waste linked to the grip that vested interests have had and still have on this council. Now, I'm aware of the time. I've got 4 pages on this one alone, but I'll give you just one example. Gihar Group, my letter to the editor today. It just shows you how influential they are. They've been influential with this council for decades. You had a budget set, you had 12th Street budgeted, shovel ready to go. Along comes the lobby group, and they have acolytes on this council still. And what did you do? You, Chris, recommended correctly with your admin that they should not do bluestone curbing. Sharon, you put the costing up. 160 a linear metre for concrete, I think 480 a linear metre for bluestone. And I've been along and photographed it. They're not even recycling the bluestone. It's brand new bluestone going in. Because as we were told during the renovation of the wall, bluestone gets attacked by salt damp and crumbles. And a huge percentage of the existing bluestone is not reusable. And I photographed it. But what happened was, even though the admin said, don't touch it, we can't afford it, we're just coming out of Escosa telling us that we're on the financial straps, the councillors ignored it. And they voted to go ahead with bluestone curbing. And to make matters worse, they then, to fund it, $415,000 of capital works projects that no doubt the budget had worked to put together. It's in your minutes. Don't shake your head. It's in your own minutes. 415,000 of capital work projects listed to be shelved. That's the power of vested interest groups within the council and outside, and that's been a legacy for decades. And it lingers because they also got policies written that to this day dictate a lot of your decision making. Those policies held back any development in Cudler. They held back any of the building growth in terms of height. And those policies have not been reneged. I'm going to stop there because of time, but I could expand on any one of those 4 reasons why you'll never develop a budget that serves our interests until those 4 structural matters are dealt with. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. All good? All right, so that is where we're at the end of that. So obviously, in relation to feedback, so the consultation session or period closes on Friday. So you can actually, there are various ways that you can actually make submissions. So we do have a budget email address, so you can actually email to budget@gawler.sa.gov.au. Any of your verbal written feedback, there is actually on our Your Voice on the website, as well as a mechanism for you to actually provide any written feedback that you want. In relation to the information that's actually been provided tonight, as I mentioned before, this information will actually be collated. The feedback, the questions will be looked at over the next couple of weeks and collated, because obviously we have got a lot of information that we've received tonight. The feedback that we've received tonight, plus what we've actually received through the website and direct submissions, will actually be considered at the special council meeting on the 9th of June by council members. And then that will be incorporated into any, what the budget is adopted on the 22nd of June. I don't have anything else to add. I don't know if you want to close up. Chris, again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I think I have found the session very helpful, and I think that in relation to, and again, it would be great for the community to come out and to these sessions in the future. So of those people that are here, I do encourage you to encourage your fellow neighbours to come along, because as I say, you know, there is information that we are limited in what we can actually provide in our budget document, and we do know that there's other different forms that people actually receive information. And this is actually your opportunity to receive in a different format other than on social media or through the paper or through the website of the information that we provide. So thank you, and thank you for anyone that was watching online. Thanks. Oh, sorry.